Town Council, Solicitor Mike Ursillo, and Town Manager Jim Cunha. On. Okay?
Okay.
So, whenever you're ready.
All right.
I'm ready.
Good evening, everyone. I'm calling this meeting of the Barrington Town Council to order at 7:02. All members of the Barrington Town Council are present this evening. As we've talked about before, it's in the age of COVID here, we're doing these meetings by Zoom. That means when there is time for public participation, I'll ask you to raise your hand, or there's a function in this, if you can sort of figure it out, to raise your hand. And we will look around and I'll call on you and then you'll be unmuted. But until then, members of the public will be muted while we move forward with our meeting. I am going to dispense with the Pledge of Allegiance this evening, and I would, before we go even into announcements, I just want to check to make sure that Jonathan Kuhn and Christopher Salvador, if they're here, they know I'm intending to ask for a continuance for the interviews for the Cemetery Commission at the request of the Cemetery Commission. So I will go ahead and make that motion to continue those interviews until our next scheduled town council meeting. That is my motion. Does anyone want to make a second?
I'll second. Kate Weymouth.
Kate Weymouth has seconded the motion. Any discussion? Okay, there being none. Vice President Weymouth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Boyajian.
Aye.
Councilor Breyer.
Aye.
Councilor Hearn.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. So we've continued that until our next meeting. I'd ask our town manager, Jim Cunha, to take us through the announcements, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. The announcements can be found on the agenda, but to go through them quickly, there still seems to be some confusion about the motor vehicle tax bill, especially with the last quarterly tax bill for personal property coming out. We have not mailed out motor vehicle tax bills. We are unsure at this point, without a state budget, as to whether the phase out will begin. So once we have a state budget, then we will mail out the motor vehicle tax bills. Chances are at this point it's probably going to be a 3 billing cycle, hopefully a 3 billing cycle, vice a 4 billing cycle. The Barrington third annual Day of Caring is going to take place on Monday, October 12th, this coming Monday, between 10 and 1 p.m. at the town hall. Unlike in the past when we've gone out into the community and helped out some of our residents that are in need of yard work and painting and that type of thing, this year, due to COVID, we're going to have a contactless food drive. So we're asking people between 10 a.m. and 1 p.m. on Monday the 12th to come by town hall, and we'll be collecting food goods for tap-in as our Day of Caring. On Tuesday, October 13th, between 3 p.m. and 6:30 p.m., we'll be having a mobile blood drive, and that will be in front of the library. So we encourage everyone to come out for that. That's once again Tuesday, October 13th, between 3 and 6:30 p.m. On your agenda and on the council website, you'll see 4 listings for free flu clinics that are being sponsored in town. They're at various locations throughout the town. And you can see the dates and times and locations for those flu clinics. And obviously, in today's COVID world, we're encouraging everyone to get their flu shot. So please take the opportunity to do that if you have a chance. And that's all I have, Mr. President.
Thank you.
President Carroll?
Yes.
This is Kate. May I make an announcement as well?
Sure.
Okay. It's come to my attention that many who join our town council meetings and join the discussions may not have actually read the documents supporting each agenda item, because it's not really clear how to access those public records. It's great that so many more people have engaged in our meetings in recent months, and this is how you can be an informed participant. And I just want Mary to confirm what I say here, that 48 hours before our town council meetings, the agenda and supporting documents must be posted on the Secretary of State's website. That's when the town council members, along with the public, can first access our Monday meetings agenda, which includes department reports, resolutions, proposals, public hearings, bids, as well as all the supporting documents related to those agenda items. If you go to the town's website Friday afternoon and click on council agendas, minutes, etc. under quick links, it will bring you to Clerkbase. There on the left, if you click on council agendas, it will bring up by date all past meeting agendas as well as the current meeting. And all public documents are archived on Clerkbase. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you. I also have a question, but I'm there, right.
I'm just sharing my screen so that folks can see this. This is our barrington.ri.gov website. You'll see over here upcoming meetings. I hope everyone's looking at the website, are they?
Yes.
Yes.
And then when you go over here to this link here, council agendas, it takes you to Clerkbase, which is where we keep our agendas. You'll see there are the agendas for the Committee on Appropriations, and then the council agendas are here. If you click on that, you'll see our meeting this evening, and you click on that, and here is our agenda. Now, if you go through, you'll see a variety of links in the agenda so that you can go ahead and look at, for example, if you wanted to look at this particular resolution, I'm not sure you can see this.
Yeah.
Yes, we can.
So that's I think you're right, Kate, that we need to show folks how they can do this. So this is 48 hours before, and you'll be able to see that.
I also have a question about the notice that all property owners received from the assessor's office, and I wondered if I should ask the tax assessor to clarify what that means now, or carve out the tax assessor report.
Kate, the tax assessor is not with us this evening,
Okay.
but I will do my best to explain that. This year is a statistical reevaluation year, which typically would mean that the firm that we hired to value homes would ask to enter all the newly sold homes and would also ask to validate the properties of other people. So every homeowner should have gotten an envelope in the mail that has their home listed and the amenities of the home. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, et cetera, and you're asked to validate those. On occasion, we found that we have an extra bedroom and the home's being over-evaluated. So we ask you to go in and take a look at the form. If it's accurate, then you can leave it as is. If not, please send it back to us so we can update our records.
So during the statistical reval, a member of the reval group will enter your home?
No, that's incorrect. That's only during the full reval year.
Okay.
During the statistical, it's just done by sale prices, and we try and validate what people currently are, the condition of their current homes.
Okay, what if somebody pulled a construction permit in that year and did renovations inside?
That would also be included in a home that they would ask to look at during the typical non-COVID year.
During a statistical?
No, I'm sorry. No, during the full reval years.
Only the full reval will people be entering our homes?
No one will be entering anyone's home this year, though.
Okay, great. Thank you very much for that. I'm all set. Thanks.
The next group of items on our agenda are what we call the consent agenda. These items are usually considered routine and non-controversial, and they'll be enacted by one motion. There won't be a separate discussion on these items unless a council member so requests, and the request is for good cause, in which event the item will be removed from the consent agenda, will be considered in its normal sequence. So, does anyone from the council wish to remove anything from the consent agenda for separate discussion?
Yes.
Okay. Councilor Breyer.
I would like to remove the minutes. Actually, just the minutes from September 14th, not the 2nd.
Okay.
And from department reports, the DPW report, planning report, and police report.
Okay. Vice President Weymouth. Yeah.
I also would like to speak to the Department of Public Works. Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Hearn, anything?
No.
Okay. Councilor Boyajian.
Already been covered, thanks.
Okay. With the exception of items 6 and 7 on the consent agenda, do I hear a motion to accept the consent agenda as presented?
So moved.
Second.
Motion made by Vice President Weymouth and seconded by Councilor Hearn. Any further discussion? Vice President Weymouth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Boyajian.
Aye.
Councilor Breyer.
Aye.
Councilor Hearn.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. The motion carries. So item 6, accept the minutes. I realize you Jacob, you only wanted to talk about the 14th, but I just thought it'd be simpler to do it in one motion. So for the 14th,
Yeah.
what would you like to do with that?
So I have some changes I'd like to make, but I wanted to send them in writing to the clerk's office. So I was hoping I could make a motion to move this to our November meeting to approve the minutes.
Okay. I'm going to take that as a motion if that's...
Yes.
Okay, motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Any further discussion? No. Vice President Weymouth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Boyajian.
Aye.
Councilor Hearn. Excuse me.
Aye.
Councilor Fowler and Councilor Hearn.
Aye.
Okay. And I also vote aye. The motion carries. So that dispenses with the 14th. Do I hear a motion to accept the September 2nd minutes as presented?
Moved.
Okay. Made by Vice President Weymouth, seconded by Councilor Hearn. Vice President Weymouth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Boyajian. Councilor Breyer.
Aye.
Councilor Hearn.
Aye.
I also vote aye. Item 7, accept the monthly department reports. Kate, you had one, which was the Department of Public Works. What did you want to separate that out from?
Received an experimental antibody. All of it is part of what we did. We should have been present.
Kate, did you
Are
want
you, are you speaking to me or?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I just wanted to announce that according to our August report, that 7 trees were removed in town and 0 trees were planted.
Okay. Councilor Breyer, you mentioned the Public Works report as well.
Yes, I saw there are 4 vacancies, and I just wanted to confirm that 2 of those are the 2 new positions and 2 are prior existing positions that are vacant now.
That's correct.
And how is recruitment going for those?
We have actually hired 2 of those people before census reports come out, and we have 2 vacancies we should be filling in the next week or 2.
It's getting windy. So
Great. Okay.
that was it for the Public Works.
And you mentioned police department, the police report as well.
Yes, I just wanted to call attention to something new that the chief had added to the police reports a few months ago during the COVID lockdowns, the stay home orders and everything, when we saw a rise in domestic violence cases nationwide, and it was a concerning time, and the chief started reporting out on the calls even though they wouldn't normally be picked up in standard data because there isn't necessarily charges that result from them. And it's Domestic Violence Awareness Month, so I just wanted to call attention to the work the department's doing in that effort, and the fact that, like we learned last week with the social worker who will go on mental wellness calls, there's also I'm not sure if it's a social worker, but a victim advocate who goes with police, works in concert with police on domestic violence issues. So I just wanted to highlight that because of the month.
Great.
And thank the department for what they're doing.
Great. I should just clarify that it's not that the domestic violence charges aren't filed. It's that they overlap with other ones. So if you see a simple assault in there, that could also be a domestic simple assault. It's an overlap, so it's hard to distinguish.
Right, and sometimes there are calls for domestic situations that don't result in, nothing criminal happened, but that's still being recorded because it still contributes to an overall problem or solution to a problem.
And anything else on the police report?
Nothing else on the police report.
Okay, and you asked about the town planner report.
Yes. I saw that there was a 20% reduction in municipal energy usage in the study that was done, with a 50% decrease in energy usage directly tied to the streetlights. And I was wondering if there was anything else substantial that had been done over the last 10 years, or if the bulk of that 20% reduction in energy usage was from the change to the LED traffic lights.
You want me to talk?
Yes, please, Phil.
Yeah, so the LED streetlights were a good part of it, but the town also had completed a number of energy efficiency upgrades at Town Hall, at Public Works, at the PEC Center, and at the Public Safety Building. We've done quite a bit of work there. I can't speak to the schools, but we have done an extensive amount of improvement regarding energy efficiency over the last 10 years or so.
Yeah, it was good. It was good to see. That was a good report. The other was in
Jacob, if I can just add to the energy report, not really saving energy, but saving money. We've been working, the Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns, with the DOT, and we're getting close to DOT and National Grid coming to an agreement that DOT will pick up the cost of streetlights on state roads, which will provide us with some significant savings, as long as they've been turned into LED, which they have in Barrington.
Great. The other was the Walker Farm Improvement Plan. I saw that it was approved by a few boards and commissions, and wondered if that plan comes to the council for approval. And also it was mentioned that it was included in the report, but it wasn't, at least in my copy, I didn't see it included there.
Oh, apologies for that. I should have attached it. I thought I did. I attached a lot of other stuff.
There was a lot there.
Yeah, sorry. I can ask Mary to forward the latest plans, but so typically we go to get the input from boards and commissions as requested by the council, and then move on through to set the engineer on to the next phase, which is permitting and construction plans for bidding. The council doesn't really see it until the awarding of the bid normally. at this stage. It's pretty much the basic framework, except for some specific details at this point that you've seen before. Hasn't really changed too much, but that some of the details have.
Okay. All right. Thank you. So that's it
I
for.
want to mention that the schools, although I'm not totally familiar with their energy saving, I did note that they saved a ton of money by natural gas and upgrading their heating systems in all the schools. They're saving over 20%. I can't remember the exact number, but it was a really substantial savings. So worth mentioning too. I don't know about the energy savings, but certainly the cost savings was impressive. Anything else? Councilor Breyer?
That was all for me. Thanks.
Okay. Do I hear a motion to accept the monthly department reports as presented?
So move.
Motion made
Second.
by Councilor Breyer and seconded by Councilor Hearn. Vice President Weymouth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Boyajian?
Aye.
Councilor Breyer?
Aye.
Councilor Hearn?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. That takes care of our consent agenda. Next item on our agenda is to discuss and act on resolutions. This is we have a resolution before us for Mr. Todd Sayers. Mr. Sayers is a letter carrier for the United States Postal Service and has done some great good in our town. His actions have been brought to our attention first by our clerk's office, who he delivers the mail to the town hall, and also by Ainsley and her mom, Stephanie Drury. Ainsley wanted to make sure. Ainsley's a 9-year-old, and she wanted to make sure that Mr. Sayers was appropriately recognized for his actions. Unless anybody has anything else, we could do a vote, and then I'll go ahead and read the resolution. Do I hear a motion to approve the resolution as presented?
I'll second.
Motion made by Councilor Boyajian, seconded by Vice President Weymouth. Vice President Weymouth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Boyajian?
Aye.
Councilor Breyer?
Aye.
Councilor Hearn?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. And so now I'll read the resolution that we just passed. The Town of Barrington Resolution and Commendation of the Town Council. Whereas Todd Sayers, a U.S. postal carrier, during his delivery rounds on September 5, 2020, noticed mail piling up over a few days, and whereas Todd Sayers, knowing that the residence was occupied by an elderly woman, and whereas Todd Sayers heard cries of help, and whereas Todd Sayers immediately notified the Barrington Fire Department, and whereas the fire department gained entry to the home and found a 78-year-old woman injured on the floor after she tripped over a rug, fallen, and was unable to get up, and taken to Rhode Island Hospital, treated for dehydration and a back injury. Now, therefore, be it resolved, with deep gratitude for the example set by Mr. Sayers' keen observation and prompt notification to emergency officials, the Honorable Town Council of the Town of Barrington, State of Rhode Island, by virtue of the authority vested in it by the people of Barrington and on their behalf, does hereby commend Todd Sayers for his quick thinking and caring, prevented a tragic loss of life. This resolution adopted by the Barrington Town Council this meeting, the 5th day of October 2020, and signed by all members of the council. Mr. Sayers, thank you very much, sir. We appreciate it. That's one of the great things, I think, about having a sense of community. We care about our neighbors, and obviously Mr. Sayers cares about the folks on his route. So thank you, sir.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next item on our agenda is to discuss and act on interviews and appointments. We have earlier made a motion to move the interviews for the Cemetery Commission to our next meeting. So that leaves us with one. The Housing Board of Trustees has one vacancy for the third alternate. And I would ask if Pam Loria is here. Let me just see. There she is.
I am here.
Okay, great. Thank you for coming in, Pam. And if you could tell us a little about yourself and what you hope to bring to the Housing Board of Trustees.
Great, thank you. So my name is Pam Loria. I have lived in town for 22 years this month, actually. I've raised my two children here with my husband, David. And I really want to get more active in my community. Now that my children have moved out of the school system, that's where I have been active with my volunteer time, I'd like to move towards helping the town more at large. And as a healthcare provider of more than 23 years as a nurse practitioner, I'm acutely aware of some of the effects of housing inequity and housing insecurity and how that can affect the family and the individuals as a whole. So I'd like to get involved on that front.
Great. Thank you. Anyone from the council have any questions? Okay, seeing none. Thank you for your willingness to serve.
Thank you.
Does anyone want to make a motion?
Sure. I'll make a motion to appoint Pam Loria to the Housing Board of Trustees as the third alternate to fill the term ending September 30th, 2023.
Second.
Motion's been made by Vice President Weymouth and seconded by Councilor Hearn. Any further discussion?
I would like to say that with this appointment, I think it is the first time in 15 years that the Housing Board of Trustees is filled. Thank you for stepping up.
Motion's been made. Vice President Weymouth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Boyajian?
Aye.
Councilor Breyer?
Aye.
Councilor Hearn?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. The motion carries. Thank you, Pam.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The next item on our agenda is public comment. This is a 2-minute statement for members of the public to speak regarding a topic that's not already on the agenda. Please indicate you'd like to speak by raising your hand. And when you're recognized, please approach, when you're recognized, state your name and address for the record, please. Looking for hands. TR, yes, sir. Tom Ramachidis.
Good evening. I just want to bring up the old flag policy again. Since you guys rubbed in my face last month about flag etiquette, about the blue lives, back the blue flag, you guys strongly recommended that it was defamation of the flag by flag etiquette. So you went with flag etiquette. But right now, the flag etiquette is still not being represented by the town of Barrington. Since the flag etiquette says state flag, American flag, state flag, POW flag, and a town flag. And we still have the Black Lives Matter flag up there. So if you're going to go by town etiquette, follow the whole rule and not just pick out what you want, please. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else want to be heard? I'm not seeing any hands. Does anyone else on the council see any hands?
Hello?
Okay, is this Mr. Conti?
Yes, it is. How do you do? I'm sorry I don't have a visual. So, can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So, I am a town resident at 2 Donald Ross Road, and I would just like to speak briefly with regards to the flag controversy as a nonpartisan opinion. I just think it would be best if no flags other than those traditionally flown were allowed, because that way we can celebrate our flag in a nonpartisan way without rancor by trying to introduce another flag that could be taken from either side as as a negative or positive comment. And so I would implore the council to reconsider their recent action in this regard. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Mr. Brennan.
Good evening. Thank you for hearing me. I second the last person who spoke. I was at the informational rally earlier today. My name is on that veteran board out there. I'm a longtime Barrington resident, and I am supportive of a policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Brennan. Not seeing any other hands.
Sandy Stamoulis?
Ms. Stamoulis, is it? I'm not seeing her name. Ms. Stamoulis.
Yes, hello, can you hear me?
Yes, ma'am.
Well, I would like to reinforce in the letters that I sent to each member of the council who generously serve, volunteer their time, that I'm in strong preference for a town policy for the flying of the American flag. Appreciate all that you have tried to do, appreciate the statement you're trying to make, but I also feel that, as I stated in my email to each of you, that I do feel a policy is needed so that we do not have any problems with any concerns about being political in any nature. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Ms. Stamoulis. Mr. Douglas.
Yes, hi. Thank you very much. I appreciate the opportunity to give my opinion this evening. So I also wanted to speak on the current discussions over the flag, and I received a recent mailer and an invitation from the United Veterans Council to join them in their position out front. And I wanted to make clear why I don't and why I support a continued dialogue, but I also want to emphasize that there needs to be understanding that there is diversity in the veteran community. And the United Veterans Council may speak for the council, but it doesn't speak for all veterans. And I think that's an entree that can open us all up to some greater understanding, that if there's diversity of understanding among those of us who've actually worn the flag on our shoulder, carried it into battle, flown it out of honor for other folks, we can all honor the flag and have differences of opinion about the free speech that goes on beneath it on the flagpole. It utterly will retain its position of honor atop the flagpole, but I personally don't feel it needs personal guardians or safeguarding by forcing all other free speech to be devoid in an area around it. That I'm able to kind of celebrate the flag for what it is, and I have most in mind the way we tend to close the Memorial Day celebrations at Town Hall, looking at the Gettysburg Address, that the flag is strong. It's not fragile. It doesn't need protection, and it's far beyond our power to sully it or to hallow it any more than it already is. That sacrifice has made it what it is. And I'm encouraged by the respectful tone that I've heard from others who may disagree with me tonight, and I hope the dialogue continues. But please, as it continues, have it continue with an understanding that there is diversity of view among the veteran side, and that veterans are not asking everyone to adopt a unified position. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Douglas. I don't see any other hands at this point.
Trinky.
Trinky.
I'm sorry, can you hear me?
Yes.
Sorry, I couldn't figure out how to wave my virtual hand. I just want to say that I do not see the Black Lives Matter flag as political or partisan. It is a statement that the lives of Black people matter. How can we not agree with that? How can we take that sign down? I support it flying. That's it.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, where is the function to raise your hand?
You're on your own boat. Yeah, I can't.
So, anyone else want to be
I think Mr. DeShonis would like to speak.
Yes, sir. I cannot find you.
Oh, really?
Guys. Hi, am I on?
Yes.
I can hear you, yes.
Yeah, I think the merits of the flag or the organizations they represent is really irrelevant to our position. We just believe that the flagpole is not the place to make your First Amendment speech known, because there's just no way you can be inclusive for every organization. Like even right now, this is Hispanic American month, and I don't see a Hispanic flag up there. Why are we alienating that community? You see, this just opens up a can of worms, and I think the smart policy would be to avoid all this by not trying to, try and support one group over another's rights. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I don't see any other hands. Please let me know if someone else does. Okay.
There's another hand up. J-Lo.
J-Lo, please. Okay. J-Lo, J-L-O phone. Okay.
Hello?
Is this J-L-O phone?
No, this is Herminio Augustin.
Oh, please, sir, go ahead.
Thank you. I support Mr. Dulcino's point of view in that, the flag, we really shouldn't have anything up there. It should just remain neutral. I think that's best for the town, and that really is my position. I am a veteran, but that has nothing to do with how I feel. I just feel that it should remain neutral. We shouldn't have any kind of flag underneath the American flag. Just keep it neutral. I think that would be best for this town. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Catherine Quinn.
Hi, I'm Catherine Quinn. I'm a resident of Barrington on Brown Ave. I just want to assert that, there is nothing controversial about the statement that Black Lives Matter. And when you live in a town with over 90% white people, there is a significant benefit to letting people know that their lives are valued and matter here when they aren't fully represented. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Douglas.
That was just applause, not a request to speak again. Sorry.
Okay. We'll all get used to it. Okay. Seeing no other hands at this point, we'll move on. Next item on the agenda is to discuss and act on the Ad hoc Recommendation Committee on Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion. This is Councilor Breyer's proposal, so if you want to take us through that, please.
Sure. The proposal I've submitted for our consideration is informed by things I've learned from my colleagues on the council in the couple of years I've had the opportunity to serve Barrington with them. President Carroll, you bring a deep knowledge and commitment of a lifetime resident. Your professional legal acumen helps us mitigate risks and uncertainty that many decisions face. Vice President Weymouth, your longevity on the council affords us all the benefit of the experiences you've had overcoming repeating challenges, and your perspective is formed by an intimate knowledge of how things get done. Councilor Boyajian, you have a way of matching progressive values with minimalist government approach that gives people the opportunity and space to do the right thing without government or a law having to tell them to do so. And your insight and inquisitive approach have taught me a lot. Councilor Hearn, you have a way of advocating for constituents' needs and offering a counter perspective on things even when it might not be aligned with your own personal views. Your experience in the General Assembly has clearly helped effectively bring others' voices into our deliberations. So I'd like to thank you all for sharing your precious experience with me, because it helped me form the proposal for an ad hoc recommendation committee. As I discussed in our last meeting, the purpose of this initiative is to inform our establishment of a standing committee on diversity, equity, and inclusion. I'd like to clarify a bit about the proposal. What is the ad hoc recommendation committee? It is temporary. It is appointed by the council. It outsources council work like the ad hoc athletic fields advisory committee or the ad hoc tax exemption committee did. It is an acknowledgement that decisions that affect marginalized constituencies should be made with their input. It is one of many distinct proposals to support our community in this area. It's a tool to aid in our decision making. What isn't the ad hoc recommendation committee? It is not a long-term solution. It is not designed to be composed of members of existing community groups. It is not presented as an alternative to any other town initiative. What will the ad hoc recommendation committee do? It will support the work of the council by performing research and community engagement. It will develop a proposal for consideration by the council. It will allow for ample time, sensitivity, and attention without impeding the council's ability to continue addressing regular and emergent municipal needs. What won't the ad hoc recommendation committee do? It will not direct policy. It will not operate outside town government, and it will not establish the standing committee or make any appointments to that committee. The ad hoc recommendation committee will function similarly to the Economic Development Commission or the Resilience and Energy Committee. By that, I mean, before the council makes a related decision, the due diligence and community engagement will have been thoroughly completed. In addition to what I've learned from my fellow councilors, this proposal was informed by my personal experience that I bring to the council. My current profession is a career in human resources. It includes initiating a diversity and inclusivity group at the company where I work and serving in a variety of related committees and panels as both an ally and a victim of discrimination. I also have experience as a community organizer and even applied that experience already in our town when I coalesced a group from the LGBTQIA+ community and supported their work in achieving Barrington's first ever Pride Month. When I submitted the revised version of this proposal more than a week ago with modifications based on our first discussion at the last council meeting, the town manager received no suggestions or questions from anybody on the council. If there are any questions or concerns that have not yet been shared, I look forward to addressing them. I'd also like to hear input from the community, and then we can discuss a motion following that.
Thank you. Anyone on the council want to be heard on this? Councilor Hearn, I see you.
Yeah, I just want to say I read through the proposal. I think it would be good for our town to kind of go the way that the public schools has done as well and have a committee that addresses this concern. So I support Councilor Breyer's recommendation that we establish this committee. And I hope that it works with the schools ultimately so that we really have a town-wide energy towards this goal. And I love that it's an action item. And so I heartily endorse Councilman Breyer's proposal.
Okay.
I would like to speak. Kate?
Kate, please go ahead.
The reason why I did not send any suggestions is because while I appreciated that the proposal was edited, the proposal itself is essentially the same proposal I expressed concerns about at our last meeting. And I'll just raise 2 points to consider. that if the standing committee is expected to deal with diversity across town, that including schools, the businesses, events held at private organizations, much of which is out of the town council's jurisdiction, I feel the formation of such a group should come out of a request by the community, maybe from a townwide forum facilitated by an outside diversity consultant, and should not, in my opinion, be directed by, formed by, appointed by, or driven by the town council. However, if the intention for the charge of the DEI group to be formed from this ad hoc group is to make sure that our town policies, ordinances, projects, and events, such as they are under municipal authority, to make sure that they're diverse, equitable, and inclusive, why wouldn't we hire a diversity consultant, a qualified professional who would be on retainer like the publicity consultant that Councilor Breyer recommended a few months ago, who would be tasked with reviewing existing and proposed policies, etc. I believe that's one of the school administration's proposed actions, to hire a diversity, I think it's called a counselor. I think they've called it a counselor, not a consultant. But at the end of the day, while I agree with those who have said this sounds like a great idea, because many of my previous concerns remain, and as they say, the devil is in the details, I would be opposed to this proposal as written. Thank you.
I'd like to address a couple of the concerns and assumptions made. As I mentioned last month, I don't presume to know what the end recommendation of this ad hoc committee would be. And I certainly don't think it would incorporate the schools, because the council has no control or authority or involvement with the schools. I think that figuring out what should be included in what is overseen by a diversity-focused group is the charge of this ad hoc group. A reason not to hire a diversity consultant is because that costs money, and we have many people in our town who bring diverse experience together, who can do this work. They have interest in doing the work, and ultimately I think it serves the community well, just like we don't have professionals overseeing all of our boards and commissions. We have boards and commissions served by volunteers. You've noted previously how well our town runs because of leveraging talented, experienced, passionate volunteers, and this is a way to do that benefits generations of Barringtonians to come. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, and the schools already do have a diversity coach, and they also have a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee. So they're not mutually exclusive.
Anyone else on the council?
Yeah, I had a couple of. First, I think we need to separate out the function of, and I think the town should have a diversity committee. I think we need to separate out the functions. One, because we're a major employer in town. Any company of our size would have a diversity committee for its employees. And while I'm not suggesting, we order Jim to do it, I think we have enough employees that it's something that the administration should form for those employed by the town. It's easy to hire a diverse workforce. Well, not entirely easy all the time, but you pick out resumes, you say they're qualified, they're diverse candidates, let's hire them. I think the question is, are we a good employer to them? Do we show them the opportunities for advancement in their workplace? Do we listen to their concerns saying, you guys might not have realized this, but, and that seems to me to be separate and apart from what Jacob is raising, but I think it is important that as a major employer, we look at that and say a committee should be convened that meets and has real clout around town hall and throughout the departments, including leadership and rank and file, just to make sure that as an employer, we're doing a good job of all this stuff. Set that aside, because I don't think that's really what we're discussing, is the idea of the town council appointing this committee. And I expressed it at the last meeting. My major reservation is that I think we're having a town council just form this committee is cart before the horse. The problem ultimately that we need to tackle is that as a town council, we don't have authority over people's thoughts and their feelings and how they behave in public and how they behave in private. We're not at the dinner table with them. And the places that their attitudes really need to change are in the institutions that already exist in town. Those are all the institutions we're familiar with from dealing with them on a regular basis. Athletic leagues, faith organizations, social organizations, things like that. And I think we need to involve them and involve the larger community, not just the organizations, in the process of sort of saying, this is our core value, right? Our core value is this is important to us. And what can you do? Not just to the town, but to each of the organizations. This proposal, I think I heard Jacob say, it wouldn't operate at all outside of town government. And that's my concern, is that ultimately, while government has work to do, there's no question about it, there's so much more to do. And I think we need everyone to sort of get in a room to sort of develop this idea from their input, right? We'd like to see this organization do X, Y, Z, right? After having discussed it, we all agree on the following core principles. We all buy into them. We will all advance them in our organizations, up and down, schools, youth sports, faith organizations, everything. Tap in, and that everyone says diversity is really key to the way we function as a community. And having the town government drive that bus, it seems to me, I think we're going to fall short of where we need to be. Having representatives from boards that exist, for example, already. We have, I think it was planning and housing, et cetera. I would assume that the input we get from them is already informed by their judgment on these issues, right? And the question is, are we falling short in having a representative from those respective boards come and tell us, hey, here's where we think you're falling short. I assume we would get that input already. And I'm wondering, what is the community going to do about this at large? We've isolated certain topics where the government has authority, and we say, we can take real action. But what we found, so far is it sounds like Mary Ann's doing a hell of a job recruiting minority candidates and hiring. We heard from the police, and it doesn't sound like, and we kind of knew that going in. The police aren't out there, being abusive and brutal to minorities out in the streets. We know about that already. Housing, obviously, is always a struggle, but I'm sort of wondering what else is there? I don't think we're going to legislate this. And if we had the community saying, this is as important to us as the financial town meeting, it's as important to us as all the board and commission members going to the open meetings training, right? Everyone's saying this is how we operate. And so I think the first step should be to have the community decide what we need to do. And that's not to pass the buck back to them. The fact of the matter is there are some issues in town that are so important, like the financial town meeting, that the ball is just not in our court, right? It's over our pay grade. And if we're not going to be at the dinner table to change people's minds, which we're not, I think we're reaching farther than we can ever reach to think that we're going to change the community by virtue of appointing this. So,
Councilor Hearn.
Steve, with all due respect, I disagree. at a certain point, we're elected to represent our community. And I think through the past 3-4 months, we've been discussing an equity. I mean, we've been trying to struggle with how Barrington responds to what's happening not only in our town, but in our society as a whole. If we can't do a simple step of coming up with a diversity committee within our town, similar to the structure that the schools developed I think it places a huge burden on our already burdened boards and commissions to kind of deal with this. I get it would be perfect if organically it all could just bubble up, but you know, government doesn't always work that way. And I think we saw, like, with the most simple aspect of sports fields, we set up a whole committee to deal with that. This is a far deeper, richer, more important issue, I would argue, at the end of the day, than sports fields. So I think it should get its due from the council. I don't think it's inappropriate for us to kind of own a structure of this issue. And I would, again, hope that it works, you know, alongside the public schools, and maybe it ends up saying we need a diversity coach at town hall, or it needs to be built into, you know, the various agencies within the town. But I think it is our responsibility to step up to the plate and own the program. So I just would disagree with you on that, Steve.
No, I appreciate that. I think, you know, going back to Jacob's examples of fields and tax exemptions, there's no question that we simply control that, right? With fields, we own the land, and the decision to proceed or not to proceed is in our hands. With tax exemptions, we write and we do it or we don't do it. Here, I think, you know, we're bound to failure unless more than the 58 people in this meeting, you know, buy into this, right? The buy-in has to be tremendous to really say Barrington has changed as a community. And I've just never seen that from any government action, that the community says, God, the Barrington Town Council just totally got it right this time. It doesn't happen, you know? And so what I'm thinking is the community always gets it right. You know, the community is the community. Their decision is their decision. We can encourage them, guys, this is important to the town, right? The next time you call us for a favor, the answer will be no unless you commit to this. You know, kind of the opposite of what they're doing in Washington, which is we will not contract with someone who offers diversity training, right? That's what they're saying in Washington. We do the opposite. We're not going to be open to your suggestions unless you're buying into what we consider to be the core principle. And let the community develop that core principle. What is it we want to say? Going back, you know, what I said last meeting is, it struck me about Jacob's statement that we considered in June, was that this needs to be the hallmark of our community, right? That this is what we're known for. And it's not going to come from us, right? That's going to come from the community saying this is what we know, what we're known for. It comes, for example, from the Congregational and the Episcopal churches saying, hey, we're having a Black Lives Matter vigil every Sunday, or now it's one Sunday a month. But that we're getting known for that, right? You drive down 114 on a Sunday and you say, what's going on? It's happening again, right? That's not the town. That's not the government. Now, a demonstration is a demonstration. It has its limitations, right? Where's the action behind it? And I think if everyone says, we're all going to take action in the way we act, the way we react, the legislation we pass, the way we operate, whatever program the organization operates, that's what I'm concerned about. That we're not going to be able to do that in a committee that functions only within government. So far, what we've heard from the functions of government is that hiring hasn't been an issue and that policing really doesn't appear to be an issue. And we all know from experience what's going on with housing, and it's a pain in the butt, and it's probably the hardest thing we deal with. But ultimately, we're battling that battle. And I'm wondering what else are we going to do?
So I completely agree with Councillor Boyajian's point that this takes community buy-in, and we absolutely need to convene. I think a series of meetings, not one large meeting, but a series of them, to have the answer to this problem addressed by the community. And this ad hoc recommendation committee is going to do that. It's not something we can do as a council to convene that. We saw at our special meeting last week, I think there were one, maybe two questions asked of the police department. When we had the styrofoam special meeting that we invited all the businesses to, one business showed up. We don't get that kind of engagement without putting in a lot of grassroots effort. And that's going to happen when you get a small group of people together who are passionate about doing this for Barrington, putting in the work, reaching out to all the organizations and saying, talk to us, tell us how to solve this problem in our town, and we're all going to do it together. And then they're going to make the recommendation to the council in the spring and say, here's how it can be solved. And maybe it's a standing committee, or maybe it's, no, there shouldn't be a municipal body that does this. It should just be, some non-governmental community group, or maybe it's a hybrid. But I don't think we can sit here and say that we know what the answer is or isn't. And that's why I want to establish a short-term dedicated group to answer this question.
Councilor Hearn.
As a member of the Congregational Church, their Justice and Witness Committee is outstanding. They're right on the mark with their weekly protests on the street on County Road. I just would, as a member of that committee, would say that that little committee is doing their little work, but they're going to be looking for a vessel within the town to also help. And instead of just having these individual bubbles around town working independently, you would have all these individual bubbles being able to filter into a group that acts town-wide. So I think that this group, with whatever comes out of it, isn't a wrong path to go. I mean, we did a flag. People, certainly it wasn't necessarily the big push it was a push from the community, but at the end of the day, the town council made a decision on that. I do think it really is our responsibility to take an action on this issue. And I think a committee of this sort generated from the town council is a responsible way to go.
One of the things I think we need to sort of set expectations. We've said it repeatedly, there are areas where we can control. And then there are areas where we can't. The most we can do in terms of changing attitudes throughout the town is to try to start a conversation. We can have influence, but we don't have any control. And there's no law that we can pass that will prevent racism. You can't change what's in someone's heart with a law, but we can begin a conversation, and that's one of the things we did with the Black Lives Matter flag. The more effective ways that we can do it are the ways that we've talked about: hiring, housing, and policing. Those are areas where we can have the most bang for our buck. In this particular case with a diversity, equity, and inclusion committee, I'm not opposed in principle to this. My preference, though, would be what Jacob put down as his first alternate. That is, for it to engage a diversity consultant, to get bids to engage a diversity consultant. Yes, it costs some money, but I think this is a worthwhile cause, and that consultant can help our town council to determine the next direction that we move. That is, should we have a diversity, equity, inclusion committee? What are the things that we as a council can do? And I think they would also have the additional effect of helping our human resources director and our town manager as they are examining this issue. They might be able to provide some valuable input. So my view is that this first alternate suggestion of Jacob's, which I think is close to what Kate was talking about, engaging a diversity, equity, and inclusion consultant, would be the best course of action, because in that way we could hire someone who we know is a professional, who we know has experience with these things and can provide us with kind of the unfiltered advice that is going to be valuable to us. If nobody else on the council event, okay, Vice President Weymouth.
It's occurred to me, I just read the first alternate, and it does appeal to me more, but hearing all of, especially Steve and Joy's back and forth, it's occurred to me that the group that the town manager put together, that
the faith communities,
the big committee that's been handling the help me out here.
It's the Barrington Coalition for Community Support.
Right. To help maybe establish something along those lines that would include representatives from the various groups that are throughout town that have been working on these issues for a long time. Bring all the different faith groups that have been working on this. Bring in member from the BCEI. Bring in I don't know. There are a lot of groups in Jim's assembly of groups that might be interested in working with a diversity consultant to figure out what the town would respond to. Just saying.
Okay. Lisa Lowenstein has her hand raised.
Can you hear me?
There you go. Yes.
Hi. There's, of course, a very charged atmosphere right now in Barrington, and we all know it. It's been expressed again this evening that the voices are not aligned. And my question would be to you, Council Boyajian, what harm does a non-binding, if I understand temporary to mean non-binding, and does not operate outside of government, meaning not replacing any decision the council would make, what harm could this organization do? I've heard from about 20 people over the last few weeks, people of color, people who've been discriminated against in Barrington, and they're looking for a demonstration of more than the equivalent of we're sending our prayers when there's a tragic shooting. We need to do more as a town, and we can't expect, with all respect, President Carroll, for your words. I understand that we need to hear a broad number of voices, but I think you were the person who mentioned it, but I don't think it's fair to expect a town of 94% white people to pass a referendum on this subject instead of having our town council people step up to the plate. It's your job to represent us in a moment of crisis. It's your job to make decisions where we are all kind of watching and listening and trying to keep up with it. And we need you to make a decision. We need you to say, this is not going to do any harm. It's not gathering up opinions of a bunch of white people run groups in town. With all due respect, I'm a white person too. But it is time to give the town council the authority and the reins to say, we're going to have some people who've been discriminated against in town and some people in town who have professional experience dealing with race, because there are tons of us around, and actually, and I'm not offering myself for this interim committee, but I'm saying let those people give you some suggestions. All you have to do is say yes. And after that, if you don't like what they have to say, you can always go hire a coach, a diversity coach. If you don't like what they have to say, you don't have to take it on board. But you can show us all that you can lead. Pick up the reins that we've given you as the electorate and lead us. I really appreciate having the opportunity to speak in front of the town council. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else from the public like to be heard? Trinky, yes, please. There you go.
Hi. First, I just want to mention that the monthly Black Lives Matter vigils are not just sponsored by the St. John's Episcopal Church and the Congregational Church, Temple Habonim, the Presbyterian Church, and Barrington Interfaith Partners all support our sponsors. And the next March vigil is Sunday, the 25th, always the last Sunday of the month. I am very happy, could very easily support the first alternate motion of Jacob's to hire a diversity consultant. My problem, and it's not a very serious problem, I guess, with the recommendation, the ad hoc recommendation, is it seems redundant to me. Why not just go right to the standing committee? You have the school diversity committee to look to as a model. You say in your second paragraph of the preference that we have a sense of urgency, but you're going to wait until April for this standing committee to recommend the full committee. Just go to the full committee. And I do agree with Lisa that I think the town should make a statement and be a leader.
Thank you.
I'd like to, the reason not to go straight to the committee is that we don't yet know exactly what that committee should do. We know the area in which it should work and the types of things it probably should touch on, but to know what charge it has. Because when you establish a formal municipal committee, it's going to have a specific charge, and it'll then be, it'll have volunteer roles that we have to fill. It'll be bound by the Open Meetings Act. And so we can't, like many community committees that can evolve agilely and form themselves as they go, it's a little stricter. And so by taking the time to figure it out first, I think it improves the end resulting speed in terms of in the spring when a standing committee, if that's what the recommendation is established, they can hit the ground running rather than maybe starting in the wrong direction, getting feedback from the community that we're touching on things that are no business of government or we're not doing enough. And so that's why, knowing that we don't have all the answers right now, is the reason why I think we should proceed with some research.
Couldn't the town council right now come up with a charge for this, for a DEI standing committee? It could be a broad charge, a broad mandate, and you could start soliciting applications for people who are going to be on the committee and get started.
We absolutely could. I think we'd be likely to get it wrong without doing work in the community first, public engagement, and having more voices at the table when the decision's made.
Kate, please.
As far as I know, any committee that has members appointed by the town council has to abide by open meetings laws. So every meeting would have to be posted, and minutes would have to be shared on the Secretary of State. So, and members would not be able to discuss things outside of those meetings. And I think that is an enormous burden. It's an enormous burden on all the town boards and commissions. And every year we've had to have full-blown seminars or work groups to remind us of how stringent those open meetings laws are, because we have been sued in the past for not abiding to open meetings. So an ad hoc group would be under the same rules as a standing committee. I just want to make that clear.
Absolutely. That's one of the reasons I proposed myself as co-chair and proposed to have somebody applying to be a secretary, to make sure that while we're doing this important work, we have people in place who have the information and skills to be able to make sure that all the regulations are followed.
That is definitely a concern, and sometimes we've had committees that I'm reminded of the Barrington 300 committee wanted to become a committee of the town council as some kind of recognition. We discouraged that because it's much more difficult to get things done if you can't have conversations between the meetings. You know, the hybrid that Jacob mentioned, there's no real hybrid, but the closest thing is Jim's committee, because an administrative committee does not have to follow the Open Meetings Act, and so they're more flexible. I can imagine open meetings violations as people commenting on Facebook or emailing each other about things, because these are going to be the issues at the heart of things. But I think that's kind of getting the cart before the horse. I do think having some expert advice would be a good thing for us as we go forward in this. How can we, should we establish such a committee? What else can we do as a council? And so that's why I would support the first alternate. Jacob, please.
I make a motion to seek bids to be selected at the November 2nd council meeting for a diversity consultant with whom Councillor Breyer will work to engage the public in a collaborative effort to develop a plan for the town's DEI-focused committee and related initiatives.
Motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Seconded by Councillor Hearn. Any further discussion? Lisa Lowenstein, please.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I'm just again asking the individual town council people to respond to what harm they think trying something like this could be. I hear everything that you're saying about the open the open meetings rule. I'm sorry, I don't know the exact name of it. The people who will be asking to participate in this group and volunteer are going to take this very seriously. Barrington has a long history that it has to cope with, and we want to make sure that it's not a festival of unhappiness, and that it's actually a serious project, and people brought on are going to be people who have professional expertise or have some kind of skin in the game that makes them capable of coping with rules. Again, I understand the other recommendation. I just am trying to understand where the harm is here. This is not like dealing with seawater rise or dealing with architectural standards or energy conservation. We're talking about dealing with subjects that most people are getting wrong right now, even people who are trying really hard to get right. It's an unusual kind of problem. Thank you for letting me speak again.
Okay.
Because I've been trying to think of an answer to Ms. Lowenstein's question. I think it's this. The harm is building on a shaky foundation. And I can't say for certain whether the town council appointing an interim committee would result in a shaky foundation. It might not. I can say that if the foundation is the community, it is not a shaky foundation. And I think a lot more will come of that if we engage someone to say, look, let's work through this process as a community. And I hope the end result is they tell us, here's what we think as a community a DEI committee needs to look like. Here's what we want it to do. But if I were to make that up tonight or November 4th, I would bring nothing but my own opinions to it. That's it. And I've, like I said over and over again, tried as hard as I could and failed to persuade people on a number of things. I don't think I'm going to have any more luck here. So.
Okay. Anyone else? I will answer you too, Lisa. For me, it's not a question of what harm. I just think it's a better idea. So I respectfully disagree. I think this one's a better idea to start with a professional. Motion's been made and seconded. Vice President Weymouth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Boyajian.
Aye.
Councilor Breyer.
Aye.
Councilor Hearn.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. The motion carries. So we'll move on to our next.
Mr. President, could I ask if the council could consider a motion for funding from the council contingency fund? We're going to move forward with this. We're going to need some kind of funding to hire this consultant.
So
yeah, I think we can do that. I'd rather not give a consultant a blank check. So maybe when we get a consultant and we find out, or we get bids, we can look at how much we have in the contingency fund and how much we could spend on it. We could hopefully do that at our next meeting.
yeah, just point to that. In anticipation of the first alternate being the way we went, I've done some research to get a ballpark, but Jim, I can give you a call tomorrow and we can talk about an RFP that we can send out, and I can start putting together a list that we can work together on to find some bids.
Excellent. Thank you.
Item on our agenda is to discuss and act on the listening project. And this one is Vice President Weymouth's. So I would ask you to take us through that, please.
Thank you. So I originally thought my opening remarks for Project Othered would include comparisons with the listening project I fostered in 2008 after Barrington was traumatized by the death of a rising high school senior killed by a boat driven by a fellow student in the Barrington River. Because this occurred during the summer, the school did not feel responsible for dealing with the students and their families affected by the tragedy. And so the town was engulfed in secrecy, divisions, accusations, rumors, rage, and grief. Over 100 anonymous interviews facilitated by 3 skilled professionals helped alleviate the high tension that arose from the void created by a code of silence and the absence of any broad offerings for grief counseling. However, that was then, and this is now. Project Othered, more widely known as the Listening Project, was never intended to be a solution or the only way to begin community reflection and discussions of the issues that have taken hold of us today. As in every town, Barrington has its strengths and its challenges that include acts of racism, discrimination, and other forms of exclusivity, which, if we can access and reveal, we may be able to begin to heal our town-wide divisions. We are suggesting that a core foundation of Barrington's challenges is based on its history of othering. Othering is certainly not unique to Barrington and may well be a Rhode Island thing. Just look at what the state's ideal or mascot is: the white, independent man that stands on the dome of our state house. While we may be the smallest state in the union, we've managed to create 39 separate city-states, regardless of number of residents, each with their own local charters, governments, school systems, police, and fire departments. Rhode Island is a patchwork of independent fiefdoms, all reachable within an hour's drive. Much of the state's historical othering began with the wars against indigenous tribes, but you might not be aware that arguably Barrington's largest othered community was established around Maple Avenue by the first generation of Italian immigrants who moved here to work in the Barrington Brickyard. The former town manager, Peter DeAngelis, and I were classmates, but we never knew each other growing up because we came from very separate neighborhoods. Peter once brought to my attention the location of the town's garbage dumps, or as we prefer to say now, landfills. The town's fathers at the time decided to locate all of them smack in the middle of his neighborhood. Barrington is a town divided by elementary school districts. I remember hearing someone who loved the area I live in, but wouldn't move to it because, quote, her children had to go to Nayet School, othering those of us whose children went to Primrose Hill. Who among us have not felt othered by membership clubs like the Rhode Island Country Club, the Yacht Club? Even religious communities are divided within the same denomination: St. John's versus St. Matthew's, Holy Angels versus St. Luke's. We are further divided into distinct neighborhoods: Hampton Meadows, Roberta Platt, Bay Spring, Alfred Drown, Country Club Platt, Rumstick. I remember riding my bike once to the end of Rumstick Point and feeling like I was in a different country. Imagine how othered residents of our affordable housing neighborhoods must feel each time they are asked for their address, knowing the relentless pushback from neighbors resisting their very development. While our reputation might be that of an exclusive, white, wealthy, privileged town, the numbers of participants on the Zoom call tonight belies that notion. If we can access our town's historic and present challenges, we may be able to reflect on and begin to understand what keeps us divided. Let's listen to these stories, acknowledge them, honor them, and begin to heal. As a community, we can then look for ways to reach across our divisions and perhaps better understand what it is that holds each of us to this place. Mary, could you put up the first page, please? Description of project and objective. Project othered. We spoke, we listened. Discrimination is trauma. Trauma does not discriminate. Unfortunately, trauma is a universal experience that occurs in every community, in all economic strata, and within all demographic groups. Project O is an initiative by the town of Barrington to speak and listen for all residents and or individuals affiliated with Barrington interested in participating. We are offering members of the Barrington community an opportunity to share an experience of being othered in town. By listening, we will honor their experience and reflect on how we interact with our community. By speaking, we will share our experiences and take a step towards healing. There is power in dialogue, and this is an initial step to discuss what has previously been undiscussable. Judith Herman, the author of the renowned Trauma and Recovery, writes, "Trauma isolates. The group recreates a sense of belonging. Trauma shames and stigmatizes. The group bears witness and affirms. Trauma degrades the victim. The group restores her humanity." The group is us, the Barrington community. We have the power to recreate a sense of belonging, to witness, affirm, and restore humanity. The idea of talking about something terrible that has happened to us is usually not something any of us want to do. Discussing a hurtful experience can feel humiliating and terrifying. We assume we are the only one to have gone through this experience and that no one will understand. Sometimes we may want to talk about it, but don't know how to whom, or where to talk about it. Project O is this opportunity. Over the course of 4 to 6 months, Barrington residents and affiliates will be invited to participate in a facilitated conversation of 10 to 15 minutes, during which the willing participant will respond to the following question. Please tell me about a time you felt othered in town. Other possible prompts, as needed by the facilitator, would be who was involved, how old were you, how did you feel at the time, now, did you tell anyone, what are some of the experiences or messages you have had or received related to being who you are while in town, what if any change would you like to see, how are you feeling now, how do you view yourself in comparison with the messages you have received? And if you are currently residing in the town, what considerations factored into your decision to remain in Barrington? The goals of the project are to provide residents of Barrington the opportunity to speak and be heard, to elicit meaningful reflection and conversations among individuals, families, and communities, to provide the opportunity for residents to address the potential need for changes in individual behaviors and or community changes in policy. The end product? Sessions will be recorded, but anonymity will be maintained. Community volunteers. Has been suggested that the BHS drama students would read transcribed narratives, and those recordings will be archived. An online link would be created for residents to log onto and listen to the narratives. A quantitative summary of the data in the form of tables, pie charts, and word cloud would be offered alongside the qualitative work, which would be the tapes. For the definitions, the second page, the facilitator would be a trained individual that makes the process of talking about difficult issues easy and helps keep the speaker focused on prompt and time limit. For Project Othered, volunteer facilitators will be experienced professionals, non-Barrington affiliated, who will guide the conversation and structure the length of the interview. The other definition I'd like to repeat is the definition of othered, which is to view or treat a person or group of people as intrinsically different from and alien to oneself. Othering is not about liking or disliking someone. It is based on the conscious or unconscious assumption that a certain identified group poses a threat to the favored group. Examples of feeling othered are feeling unheard, unrecognized, and not being invited or welcomed into their organization's culture. Othering refers to the process, conscious or unconscious, whereby an individual or groups of people attribute negative characteristics to other individuals or groups of people that set them apart as representing that which is opposite to them. As for the town assistance required, Maria Suarez will develop an application form to be reviewed by the town solicitor, who will include legal documents where necessary, such as a parental waiver if minors wish to participate, and a release of information form that each willing participant will sign, giving town ownership of the taped narratives, as well as accepting the terms of their participation. And as for budget, there could be a possible budget for marketing and or the production cost for the transcription services. But that is not yet, that isn't resolved yet. And before I open this to my colleagues for discussion, I'd like to emphasize 2 points to the public. That is that, number one, Ms. Suarez and I never intended to be facilitators. No one associated with Barrington will be a facilitator, and preferably the facilitators will be people of color, but that will depend on who is willing to volunteer their time for this project. And the second thing I want to make clear is that all participants would be willing volunteers and will remain anonymous. With that, I would love to hear my colleagues on this proposal.
Let me ask Mike Ursillo a question. The anonymity, you want to protect, if we were to take part in this project or support it financially or with the town's money, how could we protect the anonymity of folks from, say, an open records request, APRA?
I think we could accomplish that because under the Access to Public Records Act, there is a balancing test of personal versus public knowledge, and I think this would clearly fall under that. We would just make sure that it's designed so that although we'd have to show how the money was used and who was paid, maybe how many participants, we could probably design something that would keep the people who are answering the questions from having to identify themselves. I think we could do that, Mike.
So that, I would see that as a kind of backup. Maybe the first line of defense against such a thing being it's not a town project. We could support it in the same way that we supported, say, Solarize, with banners, with advertising, with outreach, without necessarily having control, any control over it, not taking place at town facilities or anything like that. That would be my first kind of line of defense against those.
I agree. We could. I'm sure we could design it so that we could protect identities.
Okay. Sorry. Any other members of the council want to be heard?
Joy.
Councilor Hearn. Yeah.
Thank you. So I've heard from lots of constituents on kind of both of these proposals across the board. And one of the concerns I heard with this project was that people just kind of talking about terrible things that have happened to them. I just worry that the facilitators could get people kind of into remembering terrible things. And I just want to make sure that whoever is dealing with that is really able to deal with it professional, like, so kind of not knowing who's going to be working on this. I think since, we just made an action hiring a diversity consultant, that this might be a project that we run by a diversity consultant. I mean, I think this kind of gets into very tricky terrain in terms of people talking about terrible things that have happened to them. And I just worry that if we make t-shirts out of it and we kind of make, like, I don't know. I just think it's very tricky terrain. And I think this is something a diversity consultant could sort out as well, and kind of get a professional opinion before kind of going down this road. That would be my recommendation.
Okay.
Sorry.
Councillor Boyajian, do you have anything to add or questions or anything?
I don't have any questions. I recall this subject coming up, I think, and going back to June now. What struck me about it was Kate saying back in June, the first step is to listen. I think we struggle with how to do that, and I'm not saying it's an easy question, but looking around, some constituents have sent us stuff that other communities are doing. And one thing that I do notice is that it is not being micromanaged by the city or town government, right? Someone said, do it. And, someone goes and does it. And I think we know the limitations of our town council meetings. I mean, this is not the place to hammer that out. I'm satisfied the proposal reflects enough thought and consideration for what's being undertaken. I think Kate's emphasis, that's really important, volunteers who are willing to tell their stories. They're not willing to tell their stories.
Scott, you gotta get it.
But if they're not willing to tell their stories, nothing compels them to. And I agree. We need to take into consideration what Joy has said about the trauma that's associated with these things, and tread lightly. But that doesn't seem like these are not town council decisions, right? It just doesn't strike me that I have the expertise to say, here's exactly how this interview should proceed. And I think we tread on thin ice when we try to do that. So I would say we should proceed with it and, expect and demand that everyone does this as carefully as we expect them to.
May I respond to Joy's concerns? I've mentioned my coordinating partner, Maria Suarez, whose credentials are of a caliber that I believe should reassure your concerns. She is basically the diversity dean at Brown University. And she has contacts with various colleges and universities who have undergraduate programs for social workers and mediators and facilitators. She teaches with practicing facilitators and therapists. So that's why I asked if she would collaborate with me.
Yeah, I've looked too at Maria's background, and it's very impressive. She has experience as a psychotherapist and a clinical social worker, and now she's the Associate Dean of Student Support and the Deputy Title IX Coordinator at Brown University. And for those who aren't familiar with Title IX, that's the law that prohibits discrimination on the basis of gender in education. And Brown University was kind of one of the epicenters of Title IX 25 years ago. So they are pretty out front on that. She also coordinates with the Office of Institutional Diversity. So her background is the kind that if we were doing a national search, her name would show up. In terms of Kate, I should also mention that Kate's served this town for quite a long time and had accomplishments too numerous to mention. But a few of them are the plastic bag ban and community garden, and her bag ban has become kind of a model. Her advocacy for the environment has got communities throughout the state of Massachusetts following that back. She's been fighting for affordable housing in this town for years. I feel confident having Kate and Maria participate in this project. My confidence isn't based on being fond of Kate, although I am. It's because she gets things done. And Maria has such a great background too. Finally, I think that this is voluntary. It may be that no one wants to share their experience, and that's fine. There's going to be nobody with clipboards chasing down people of color. It's going to be entirely voluntary, and if people don't want to say anything, that's fine and that's understandable. But I think that's up to them to decide. We can present this as an opportunity for them to share, but it's really up to them to decide. And I would love to have their input, but I would not, I wouldn't think of trying to cajole it out of them. So if anyone wants to share, they should. That's how I feel about the proposal. Would anyone else like to be heard? Okay, Maria Suarez, yes, please.
Thank you. I just would like to correct Kate that I am not the Dean of Diversity at Brown University. There is someone in that position, and it is not me. I am the Associate Dean of Student Support at the Graduate School. Sorry.
Okay. Anyone else? Vince Wicker, yes, sir.
Hey, how are you? Good to talk with everybody today. I have read this proposal, and I think it is probably the wrong time for this proposal for the following reasons. One, Councilman Carroll, I think that the point that both you and Councilwoman Hearn brought up is that I'm not sure of the level of participation with this. To me, it sounded invasive and insulting, and it struck me to the core as something that, why would somebody who had gone through something this unfortunate in this town want to come and experience it? And this is no reflection on Councilwoman Weymouth, but the audacity of asking somebody who may live here, who pays taxes here, who puts up with all this ridiculousness that everyone distracts from just the point of equality, to have a question at the end of the survey that says, so why did you stay? Just by virtue of a plan as one-dimensional as this, tells me that while I think everyone's heart is in the right place, it's the wrong time for it. I fundamentally, having grown up in an inner city, having been, travel all over the world and come in different places and come here, spent, over a decade serving on town committees, and I really think that this is a tough lift. You know, it's a heavy lift, and I think the town is taking the right ways to do it. And I think that having people come together and talk about these things together, about ways to solve it, is great. And I'll just wrap up with this: is that the thing that bothers me the most as a recovering consultant is that there is no objective to this plan. There is no other way than just to display it, and for sake of a horrible term, is like it's just voyeurism, and it's insulting. I would want to participate in it. My sons have both grown up in the school system and been called different things, and I would not dream of having them sit and have this recorded for somebody to go see, watch, record, or replay. I'm a little older. I'm not that groovy where I can get everything, but this is something that chilled me to my bone. So I appreciate your time. I absolutely love living here. I cannot tell you how much I embrace this Yankee sensibility of being able to talk and voice these opinions and not have them held against anyone. I really I appreciate the time, and I appreciate the work everyone's doing. This is an awesome place. Let's just keep making it awesome, and just not isolate people. Thank you.
Thanks, Vince. Anyone else? Okay, Catherine Quinn.
Hi again. Thank you for the work that you put into this. I could not. I'm so happy to hear what Vince had to say. Everything that he said is pretty much what I said last time that this was brought up. And this is a revised version of the plan, which is significantly better. In the letter that I wrote to the town council, the several other resources that I provided to talk about other effective projects that are going on throughout the state, and being myself involved in a project that requires the trust of a community and requires a lot of sensitivity to this subject. I can't think of a worse time, judging from the previous history of this particular project, to do this project, especially with the just having decided that you're going to take on a diversity consultant, and you haven't supported creating a diversity and equity committee, and now you want to forge ahead and do a listening project that is. So I don't know if anybody read the letters that were submitted, and I think maybe I missed the apology that was supposed to happen tonight. Did anybody on the council acknowledge what happened at the last meeting? Because I'm pretty sure that if anybody participates in this project, one of them will be Mariana Silverbuck, who was called out at this meeting last month by Councilwoman Weymouth because she's a woman of color, specifically. So othering isn't just having negative expectations of other people, it's having an expectation that the Brazilian woman from the group that you were totally tearing down, how dare the Brazilian woman not get back to you? You were offended because Mariana Silverbuck didn't respond to your precious project. That was absurd. It was incredibly.
You're breaking up. I think we've kind of got the gist, but you're kind of coming in and out. I should just say, Kate, that I know you've been fighting racism in Barrington for long, and many people have been living here. That you've been, maybe nobody more than you has been working on affordable housing, and every time you've worked on an affordable housing project, you'd have to do it in the face of headwinds of dog whistles and code words that come up every time someone someone opposes this. Certainly not all opposition to affordable housing developments is based on racism, but there is, with every one and every project, you faced it. So I thank you for your service. And I'll call on the next person, Lisa Lowenstein.
I just think that the same, as Catherine said, and as I think you all can agree, and I hate to quote someone we all know in TV world who says that, and you agree with it, but we just listen to all of you deliberate very carefully and in a very measured way as to why these subjects are best left to a diversity consultant, not only in terms of execution, but also in terms of inception, and to make sure that we aren't deciding now that we're going to kind of burn through a subject without being informed. And with all respect for Maria Suarez, the subject of race is site specific, and it's not site specific, just like many other specific issues that communities face. I don't understand what is the rush after I've witnessed 40 years personally of racism in Barrington. What's the rush now before you hire the diversity consultant to go through with this project? If it is necessary to figure out how it's supposed to operate, that's really not something that the town council is capable of outsourcing. And if we can't outsource an ad hoc committee to design a diversity committee, how can we outsource this? There are people who have written letters to the town council that have been forwarded to me who are vehemently opposed to this and are not speaking or not attending this meeting because they're people of color and they don't want to be called out. And they have referred to many instances from previous meetings on this subject, and they know what they're talking about. I think that this is very well intentioned on behalf of Councillor Weymouth. And I think that the town wants to do the right thing and the town council wants to do the right thing. And for that reason, you reserve this vote for another day and you make a decision to listen to a diversity consultant, let them advise you as to what you should do and not risk. I mean, what about the brand of Barrington? You're going to advertise this outreach and then no one shows up and you have nothing to show for it. That clearly means you missed the mark. You want to take that chance to show that you got it wrong? Ham-handed is not something you can afford to be right now. We are all proud of Barrington, super proud of Barrington, and proud that Councillor Weymouth would stick her neck out and propose something like this, which requires so much thought. But we can't get it wrong. I think we need to kick this can down the road until you have your diversity consultant. It's a matter of months in the big scheme of things. You've made your great step. As a town council, you're hiring a diversity consultant. Don't take a misstep now. Thank you.
Thank you. Danny Breyer.
Hi, yes, thank you. Thank you for letting me speak. I have to say, you know, over the several months that this project has been discussed, I am aware that numerous people, including people of color, have spoken out about their deep concerns and have expressed unwillingness to participate. I am concerned that a project that is based on listening seems to not be listening to the concerns of the exact community that you're purporting to listen to. It's very concerning to me that those comments specifically from that community of people are not being addressed and heard. So it is very concerning to me. I think listening is great and wonderful, and we have to do it, and we have to do it by listening to the feedback that has come regarding this project. And I also agree that it is well intentioned, and I very much appreciate the intention behind it. But I do believe that continuing forward with it would offend those who it's meant to help. Thank you.
Thank you. Wafa Frage. Ms. Frage.
Yes, thank you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. I don't know the name of the speaker or the resident. I just want to make a comment about what he said. He said something about that we have to be neutral in regards to the BLM flag. And I'm sorry, but we cannot be neutral when someone sleeping in her bed is shot 7 times. If you accept this to your sister or your daughter, and you want to tell me that you want to be neutral, I'm going to come to you and say, don't be neutral, fight for her. We can't be neutral when someone is kneeled on their neck for 8 minutes and 46 seconds, and then they lose their lives. We can't be neutral. If that person is Jewish, I'm going to raise the Jewish flag if there is a flag. If that person is Muslim, I'm going to raise the Muslim flag if there is a flag. If that person is Christian, we're going to raise that flag. So we can't be neutral. When our fellow human beings are suffering, we cannot be neutral anymore. Not in 2020. Not in 2020. Not when the COVID is killing people and our president is saying, don't be afraid of COVID. No, we can't be neutral anymore. I'm sorry. Either on a government level, on a personal level, or on a town level. No one is going to be neutral anymore. In regards to the Councilwoman Weymouth proposal, I really appreciate the intentions and all the hard work. And I just want to say something. I am one of the people in the town who will not participate in this proposal if it goes through. I recommend what Councilwoman Hearn mentioned in the beginning, that have the consultant that is going to be hired by the town look into this and study it further. Because my goal, I would love to see this project go through, but I want to see, okay, have the drama team in the high school present it or archive it or whatever, but we need results. And one other thing, the trauma, you mentioned in the project proposal that the trauma is universal. Trauma is not universal. Trauma associated with immigration and refugees is different than trauma associated with sexual assault. Trauma associated with your skin color is different than trauma associated with other things. So trauma is a big thing. We can't say in our project that trauma is universal.
I don't think I said that.
I thought I heard it in
No,
the description. I'm sorry. So trauma can't be universal. We really have to be worried about re-traumatizing those people when they are interviewed. I appreciate the expertise of Maria, but I'm not, as you mentioned, she's not the one going to be who interviewing, correct? So we need to make sure that whoever is going to be volunteering to be interviewed, they are not re-traumatized again, because living the trauma again can be more detrimental than the trauma itself. Thank you. And I think Kelvin had his hand for like the last half an hour.
May I just respond? I was wrong. I did say, unfortunately, trauma is a universal experience that occurs in every community. I think by that it means that trauma occurs in every community and that it does not discriminate.
Yeah, you're right, Kate. But when we talk about, let's say, refugees, okay, coming from Senegal or coming from any other country, or trauma from Hurricane Katrina or from any natural disaster, trauma from COVID, it's not the same trauma that is from a car accident, or the trauma associated with the racism, with the compounded racism since you were 9 or 10 or 7 and until your 60s and 70s. No one is on this Zoom link is going to wave their hand up and say, I lived this trauma. I challenge you all. I will be more than happy. I will be, Kate, more than happy to participate in your program, in your project, if you guarantee to me that my kids will not be called terrorists in the YMCA in the Y in Barrington, if I will not be discriminated against at the Barrington Community Garden, if I will go to CVS in town and 2 employees will not follow me, okay? I will not. I'm sorry.
The point of it is that I know your experiences because you told me, but your experiences and those who have been acted against is not information or stories that most people in town will believe happened. So our divisions will continue. And to be perfectly honest, I've lived here all my life, and there has always been something about living here that made me feel like I wasn't part of a community. And it's the experiences of your sons, of you, and frankly, me recently. You know, I've experienced ageism, which really I find, you know, fairly shocking. But in order to make the changes that all of us want to see to our culture and in Barrington and to our reputation, we have to understand where those divisions lie. We have to confront them. And by listening to people's experiences is the only way that I see that we can begin to look for ways to change it.
Now, what can...
And a diversity consultant is not going to make changes.
I heard from more than one person of color in town, and they both agreed that if they really want to do the listening, I mean, if they mentioned actually that going to their own therapist can be more healing than doing the listening project. And the reason is, if we're just going to provide them with a safe space to speak about their traumatizing experience, they might as well sit in a comfortable chair in a therapist or social worker, or clinical social worker office and just talk about their trauma, and maybe they can cry and live it again or not. So, but if there's no outcome, that's my point. What is the outcome? Are we going to inform the town or the residents that, okay, there is racism? We know there is racism. Kate, you just mentioned there is racism against even people of age. I mean, there is racism. So we should be beyond that stage. You know what I mean?
We should be. I couldn't agree with you more, but we aren't. We haven't made, when you look at it, we haven't made progress from the progress we made in the 60s. It's quite evident.
I mean, if we have people in town are saying the blue line matter or the purple line matter, how about I need a flag for the social workers? I think social workers who go into homes are troopers.
They are.
Okay? So why are we, I love police officers. They came to my home over 20 times. They helped me out, okay? I need to know, why are people saying that we have to be neutral? Be neutral when your fellow human being is being killed just because he's darker or she's darker?
Okay, I do want to give other folks a chance.
And can you let Maria wanted to speak?
Sure.
She has to unmute.
I did, but I'm very conscious that there's a man named Kelvin here who's in front of my face, and he's had his hand up since the beginning. So I rather give him my turn and I'll take a turn afterwards. Thank you.
There you go.
Okay, so after hearing all of this, I don't want to even say anything now. The conversation is amazing, and the proposals, just this discussion and everything. But so I'm kind of late to the conversation because I just read Kate's proposal early this morning, and I was kind of blown away with it, thinking, wow, this is incredible. This is unbelievable. This is incredible. And we have an opportunity for our town, and it's not like an either or with Mr. Breyer's proposal and Kate's proposal. These go hand in hand, and the timing to me looks perfect because you have a time frame on Kate's where Jacobs is just getting kind of started. But I think that because the way I look at it, I'm going to grow so much by hearing what my community has experienced because I'm very limited. So I know that I'm going to grow immensely from that. I think, Mr. Wicker, I think I'm underestimating the pain. And Wafa, I think I'm underestimating the pain tremendously. And so I don't think that I have much, right. Like I said, I'm going to be growing from this, and our community is going to be growing from this. But to grow, a lot of people have to endure the pain. What I do want to point out to Mr. Wicker, though, is that that the stories are going to be told by a third party, the high school drama. And I kind of what excited me about this was just like Susan Collier's project to some degree, where she got the stories from from Atria Springs, from the elderly there, from the group there. She also did her Awakening, where she brought in spirituality. So hers much different on an upbeat, but the stories were just unbelievable, and it made me understand my community better. So I'm going on, and I shouldn't, because the conversations that you guys have been having were just unbelievable, and I feel honored to be part of it. But thank you, Kate, for your proposal. I don't know where this is going to go because, like I said, I'm late to the conversation, and a lot of people have chimed in apparently much earlier, months or so ago. So I'm not up to speed with all that, but that's all. Thanks.
Thank you. Maria, did you want to say something? Got it on. There you go.
Thank you so much. I didn't realize Kelvin was going to say good things, so I'm glad he did, because in some ways, Kelvin, you said some of the things that I'd like to address, which is, first of all, enduring the pain. I don't know that this program is going to stop the pain. The pain is already happening, and this is exactly what we want. I'm not, as a woman of color, I am not going to feel less pain by sharing it or more pain by sharing it. I will feel fulfilled if even one person who listens to one experience that I've had that I am volunteering to share, because I've worked through my trauma and I'm not re-traumatizing myself. If it helps anyone kind of take a moment and pause and relate, whether it's about sexism or ageism or xenophobia or religious prejudice or homophobia. So when Kate and I thought about this program, it was not simply or just about race, which, by the way, I don't see, I don't know that there is a good time, and I don't know that we're ever going to solve it or get it right. The world hasn't gotten it right. I don't think the town of Barrington is not necessarily going to get it right, but we can take steps and make some sort of outreach and recognition and acknowledgement. And so I feel like, you know, I would encourage, as a woman of color who also grew up in New York City and have 3 daughters here who have had all sorts of experiences, good and bad. I think that this is exactly what they need to hear and need to talk about and need to have others listen, because oftentimes when there's been discussion, it was like, wow, I didn't know that would hurt you, or wow, I didn't even know that that triggered you in any way. And I think that we say that all the time and don't recognize it. So the listening piece goes hand in hand with the diversity and equity and inclusion piece. So my hope is that this is a first and very safe step, because A, the facilitators are trained. They won't necessarily be therapists, but I'm sure some of them will be. But B, people are being asked to share. They will know exactly what they're being asked to share, and I would assume that they're coming forward of their own accord. No, this is a voluntary act. And for minors, they will need parental consent. So that would dictate that the children or the minors will have discussed it with their parents. That would be the hope and the expectation. So thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm going to call on Sarah Giordino and then Emily Gorman, and then have to ask everybody who's already spoken. We do need to get to the rest of the agenda. So Sarah Giordino, please.
Hi, I'm sorry, I not really representative here, putting kids to bed. I'm a professor at RISD, and I'm a documentary filmmaker and artist, and I worked with communities my whole life. I worked with marginalized communities that asked me to do a project about them, even though I was white and they're, you know, Black and Latinx youth. And when we had those discussions, I also asked them, like, why would you choose me? Why could we even do this? Could I do this? And I think that's a question that every white person have to ask themselves, you know, when you conceptualize a project. Why me? And do I do it right? And in our discussions, they felt that they think that I would do the work. And I did do the work. It took 5 years. And I spent all my time with this community. So what I want to say, and this is what's really upset, I'm sorry, this is really emotional to hear this. Like, listen to Vince, listen to Wafa. Like, this project is asking, you know, marginalized people, like, you know, people that have experienced othering to do work. But they're not the ones that should do the work. It's the white people of Barrington that are not innocent. I rely, even as a queer woman, I experience, of course, some stigma, absolutely, and I can cry about that. But I rest on my white privilege every day. You know, this is something, the work needs to be done by the majority, the white people in this group. And if we don't realize that, then something is not right. And when you do a project and you work with the community, you just have to be willing to take the criticism and take it at heart. You can't be defensive. Like, it's just, and for me, listening to this it's quite emotional that we keep pushing back against people like Vince, who says I'm offended. You guys need to, like, we need to do the work. Barrington is not innocent. It's not a surprise. These incidents, everyone knows about them. Someone did them. You know, we all know. There's no innocence here. So, sorry, I'm actually not going to say it's well-intentioned. I'm going to say when you take on a project like that, you need to understand the enormous responsibility and be willing to take the criticism and really let that transform you as a white person. So that's all I was going to say.
Thank you. Emily Gorman, please.
Hi, yes, I agree with a lot of what Sarah and the other speakers beforehand spoke about. And I listened to the project in the September 2nd meeting and read the listening project other document. And I do have a lot of concerns and issues with it just because it seems like it's kind of performative and it seems as though it's trying to make up for past times when people could have acted and done things to change. And it seems just like there's a lot of insensitivity in the language when I was reading it. One of the things that really struck out to me and that made me feel quite uncomfortable and discouraged about the direction of the project was saying that it could be advertised with bumper stickers and with t-shirts. I feel like that is something that is kind of screams being performative. And that shouldn't be the point of a project like this. It feels like there's just a lack of direction and planning in the project with the outcomes, with the solutions that it was trying to present. And I'm not trying to say any of this to criticize anyone because I think this is the direction we should be going. We should be having conversations like this. And I feel like everyone opening up about their concerns with the project is something that's super effective because in order to make a project that is successful and that helps people and helps this town move forward, there needs to be criticism and there needs to be constructive conversation. So that's why I applaud everyone who spoke beforehand because it does take a lot of courage to speak about your experience and you know, these conversations are meaningful. But another thing that I found that was insensitive was just the language of saying that by listening to people, we're going to honor their experiences and reflect on the people's experiences that are opening up about these stories. And I feel like that language just kind of shows that there needs to be more time and training by the people that are creating this project. This project, I think, by what people were saying earlier was when is the right time to do this. I think they're trying to say this project doesn't need to be rushed because it is such a sensitive project and because it is going to impact so many people's lives. It should be better developed by people who are trained in working on projects like this, where they have to work with marginalized communities and where they have to work with people who have diverse experiences. Because hearing language that's saying people are going to be honored and reflected upon, a big thing is that the marginalized communities aren't the ones who are responsible for teaching other people about their experiences. To be anti-racist, people need to do their own research. They need to look at the history. They need to understand institutional and structural racism, and people need to seek that out for themselves. So yes, it's important to hear everyone's side of the stories, but it's also the fact that we can't be relying on these people to enlighten us and to educate us. As other people said earlier, I don't know why there is I don't think there should be any sort of disputes about how racist Barrington is. We see these stories and we hear about it, and I think we're past the time of those stories because the reality is here that this is a town that has been affected by structural racism and institutional racism, and that there's still issues that are occurring. So I think that there's just a lot of insensitivity in the language, even with just offering the 10 to 15 minute interviews. I think that's a pretty short amount of time. And I know that last question was tweaked now, but the question of asking why people remained in Barrington, I think even if it is tweaked, I think it still shows that there needs to be people who are going to create a project like this that are actually trained in working on a project like this and have done things like this before to make those people that are going to speak and be part of it feel welcome and feel trusted. There needs to be a bridge of trust for people to open up. So okay. I think that there's a lot of things to consider.
Okay. Thank you, Ms. Gorman. I'm going to have to cut off debate. We've got some more things to get through in the agenda.
Trinky has not spoken.
Okay, Trinky, please.
I think that I respect everything that everyone has said, and I understand the different points of view. I would like to say that I think probably just about everybody here acknowledges that there is racism in Barrington. Not everybody acknowledges that. There are a lot of people who say there's no racism here. Remember the editorial in the Barrington Times a month or so ago. So how do we get those people? We do want to change minds. We do want to make people anti-racist. We do want to help them understand what systemic and institutional racism is. Not just interpersonal racism, calling people names, discriminating against them as individuals. I think one way that we can reach those very recalcitrant people is by having them listen to stories of people who have been hurt in town. And I think that this project, it is for volunteers. And I think that the two people who have conceptualized it have done a great job. Kate is proficient in bringing projects to fruition. Maria Suarez obviously is extremely qualified in the area of diversity and trauma. So I can imagine houses of worship and other groups listening to the recorded stories and really learning from them, and then going on to, then maybe they can begin to understand structural racism, and then they can do the work. How do we get them initially engaged in doing the work? Thank you.
So I'm going to make a motion. That is a motion to authorize the listening project to proceed as proposed. Unless, Kate, did you want to make that motion?
You're welcome to make that motion.
So that motion has been made. Is there a second?
I'll second it.
The motion's been made and seconded. From the council, any further discussion? Vice President Weymouth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councillor Boyajian, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councillor Breyer, how do you vote? I'm not seeing him on. He's muted. And Councillor Hearn, how do you vote?
Nay.
Okay, and I vote aye. So, Councillor Breyer, Mary, has he recused on this? Is that what it was?
He had recused at the last meeting. He had sent a form in, but I didn't receive one early, and I didn't hear him say that he was recusing tonight, but I will assume that since he walked away, he has recused himself.
This is Mike Ursillo. I think that's a good assumption. He's already recused on the matter. I would assume that he's continuing to recuse.
Okay.
Thank
so
you.
I vote aye. The motion carries 3-1 to 1. So the listening project will proceed. And thank you again for your hard work, Kate. Oh, Jacob.
Yes, I recused. Sorry, Mary, I got the form back to you late. I forgot I had to send a new one for this meeting.
Thank you, Kate, and thank you, Maria. All right, we'll move on to the next item. I'm going to, without objection, I'd like to move to item 17 and then come back to 16, which is the bids. And I'd like to take the those first. Is there any objection from the council? Because there are some folks I think who want to be heard on this. So I am opening the public hearing into 2020-18, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 119 prohibiting housing discrimination. And we have a public hearing on this. We've introduced this. There's been some changes to it, but when I say changes, this recommended changes by our Housing Board of Trustees. So this was Councilor Breyer's. Did you want to be heard on this, Councilor Breyer?
Sure. As I had mentioned when we introduced it, I think in early September, this came from some discussions I had with members of the Housing Board of Trustees, and then later it was worked on or reviewed by the whole Housing Board of Trustees, and I worked with the town solicitor's office. State law has some good anti-discrimination laws on the books to ensure people have a fair opportunity, equitable opportunity to rent homes or purchase homes. But it falls short with regard to lawful source of income that is not currently protected on state law. And so this ordinance would do so. The initial version of it also encompassed all of the state regulations to local law. And when it was reviewed by the Housing Board of Trustees, and also when we received some feedback from a constituent with concerns about the redundancy, it was decided that it would be best to remove that. And so the recommended amendment to it now is just limited to the lawful source of income prohibition, or the prohibition on discriminating based on lawful source of income.
Okay. Would anyone from the public like to be heard on this? I'm looking for hands. Jeff Grove, please.
Hi, Mike.
Hi.
I've seen the redraft. I'm the one who commented on the original draft, and my question is primarily about the note. Okay, at the top of the ordinance, it says there's nothing in this chapter, just an editor's note that states as follows: the town of Barrington enforces the provisions of statute 4524 2.1. Of the general laws of Rhode Island with respect to housing standards. What I want to understand is there any conflict with the state law? And I mean, I understand that it was just stated that there isn't, and that this law would go over and above state law, or attach onto it, so recognize state law, and then add to it. Is there any reason why the state did not include this provision in the state law?
They did consider it, but it did not make its way to the General Assembly. That's my understanding. Is that yours, okay, Jacob, that they considered it but didn't pass it?
It's been held for further study a few times in committee, in conversation with Housing Works, that it hasn't really received significant deliberation. It had just been proposed but never advanced.
And so, what is this solving a problem that exists or a perceived future problem?
I haven't heard reports that it specifically exists now, but right now it is lawful to discriminate based on a legal source of income.
What would an example be of something like that?
Somebody said, I have a second weight.
Mike, I know that Amy Ranone from Rhode Island Housing is actually on the meeting right now, and I know she would have a great deal of insight on not only the experiences of people who have been discriminated against based on source of income, but the consequences of that.
Thank you. Amy, can you speak?
Try to raise her hand.
I cannot. I'm gonna.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes. Please go ahead.
Thank you. Try to get my video on. Thanks for having us here tonight and the opportunity to speak. And thank you, Councilman Breyer, for introducing this ordinance. Rhode Island Housing. I'm Amy Raynone, Director of Government Relations for Rhode Island Housing. We've supported this legislation along with a broader coalition at the State House for a number of years now. Also, although on the call, and I'd actually like her to spend most of the time speaking to you, is Clarabelle Shavers. She's our Director of Lease Housing and actually oversees the Housing Choice Voucher Program, known by many as Section 8, which is an important part of this legislation and the ordinance. She can give you a better sense of how the program works and the work that we do to try to streamline the process for landlords and what happens to folks who aren't able to find an apartment as a result of source of income discrimination. Before I turn it over, though, I would just note that this legislation for the past several years has passed the Senate, has not yet made it through the House. Fair Housing, a group that does fair housing testing for the state of Rhode Island and southeastern Massachusetts, did a report a couple of years ago that analyzed source of income discrimination in the state. I'd encourage folks to look at it if you haven't had the opportunity to. They found, significant amounts of source of income discrimination. I think it's particularly a problem outside of sort of urban core areas. But that report really clarified over 90% of voucher holders are basically not able to rent up units that they otherwise, that are affordable to them based on the income standard and everything. Because of challenges like landlords being unwilling to rent to people that participate in the program, which is the problem this ordinance is intended to address. So if it's okay with the council, with that, I would ask if Clarabelle Shavers, I think she's on as C. Shavers on the call, have the opportunity to speak and give you a little bit more detail about the program itself and how it works.
Thank you. May I?
Yes,
can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay. So thank you, Amy. So I'm Clarabelle Shavers, Director of Lease Housing at Rhode Island Housing. Part of the programs that we administer is the Housing Choice Voucher Program. So I want to give you all a little bit of background and what the program is about. It is a federally funded program that pays for rental assistance on behalf of low-income families. Right now, we have approximately over 9,600 families in the state of Rhode Island that receive assistance through this program. The program is administered by the local housing authorities. We happen to be the housing authority for the community of Barrington. We've got, I think, 25 voucher holders right now in the town of Barrington. The goal of the program is to help low-income families afford decent, safe, and sanitary housing in the community of their choice. The tenants that receive a voucher is, there is a payment, what we call a payment standards that is set by HUD with some discretion for the housing authorities. The rents that we have right now for the city of, for the town of Barrington, right now, 1 bedroom, you can get $12.98. A 2-bedroom is at $15.51. A 3-bedroom is at $19.47. And a 4-bedroom is at $22.88. Landlords still, if you participate in the program, you still, have a lot of discretion in managing your tenant, especially when it comes to qualifying a tenant. You still can deny tenancy as long as it's not on non-discriminatory basis, which means poor credit, criminal background, or bad reference, especially landlord reference. You can still require a security deposit. You can still and should enforce the lease as you would with any other tenant. And also landlords are very entitled to receive rent increase on an annual basis if they request it. We are trying to recruit more landlords, especially in communities like Barrington. So we've instituted a few incentives to attract more landlords. We have a what we call a housing stabilization team that can help interfere when there's when this tenant landlord problems. That way they could address it before it gets onto eviction and or termination. We also have a landlord mitigation program that can pay up to $2,000 for any tenant caused damages. We have also a listing website that landlords can list their units for free. And we could also introduce landlords to other sources that we have around housing, like the Let's Save Home program that provides for forgivable loans to remediate lead paint and in homes. Another part that we're doing is we're trying to pre-approve units. So we try to go out and inspect the units and get it ready for the program. And this is in the hopes to try to get your unit approved in less than 15 days. We're trying to make the program more expedient. So what happens right now, we have thousands of families that are currently waiting on the wait list for vouchers. And a lot of time these families are waiting on this wait list for 5, maybe 10 years. And what happens is once they get to the top of the list, we issue them a voucher. Usually we give them 90 days. A lot of times we give them extensions, depending on the circumstances. But what happens is they have a hard time finding the unit. Although they could afford the unit, in most cases they could afford the rent because they have assistance, they get denied. They get denied by landlords just simply because they have a voucher. Or the source of the income is the voucher. Right now our rate is our source success rate is 40%. What that means is that out of 10 families that we issue a voucher, only 4 successfully lease up, which means 6 families return the voucher because they cannot use it. And that a lot of times, unfortunately, has to do because they're being denied for no other reason other than the source of income. So I think this bill is very important, and happy to be here. Thank you very much, and willing to answer any questions.
Thank you. Any other questions from the public? Yes, Councilor Hearn.
I just have one question. Is this adopted in any other community in Rhode Island, to the Rhode Island housing people?
No other municipality in Rhode Island has adopted it. The city of Providence has an ordinance that has been introduced and is in their ordinance committee, I think it is. And my understanding is that a similar ordinance is scheduled to be introduced in the city of Cranston on October 15th. If you look nationwide, there are 15 states and Washington, D.C., plus 91 counties and municipalities have enacted discrimination ordinances or statutes like this, including all of our New England neighbors except for New Hampshire.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? Okay, seeing none. Let me just double check because sometimes. Okay, seeing none, I am closing the public hearing. Does anyone want to make a motion?
Yes, I'd like to make a motion that we adopt Ordinance 2020-18, an ordinance amendment to Chapter 119 prohibiting housing discrimination as amended.
As amended and presented by the Housing Board? Is that
approved by the Housing Board, or as supported by the Housing Board?
Okay. So there's been a motion made. Is there a second? I'll second that motion. Any further discussion from the council?
I did want to propose one amendment, and that would be, otherwise I'm fully supportive of it. I think this has come a long way and it looks really good. In section 119.5, I would propose to delete subsection A2. I know that the ordinance would prohibit discrimination based solely on someone's lawful source of income. I don't know that we need to prohibit someone from asking the question.
That was, and maybe Solicitor Ursillo can speak to this. The question is allowable as part of the form. So there's part of it. There's an exclusion to this. I'm looking for it.
Mary, if you could scroll down, this is the original. The one that we're looking at really is the redlined one. So if you scroll down further into the document to the second, there you go. 19.5. I think it's the very next page, page 3 of 5. Okay, right there. Maybe you could zoom in on that. Mike Ursullo, Jacob was asking if you could address this.
Okay, I'm here. I know that Amy Goins in my office did a lot of work on the ordinance, and after we had the conversations with the housing board to make all these changes, it was felt pretty strongly that these changes be made to the ordinance. Steve, what exactly is your issue with 2A?
So it's not 2, Mike, it's A2. So it's in 5, I'm sorry, I gotta scroll back up. 119.5A2, which in the red line, it's very hard to make out what exactly it's saying. So I went back to the original, and I'm not sure that
But it's crossed out though now, right?
Not in its entirety, no.
Yes, it's crossed out in its entirety.
No.
It's no longer there.
What you're looking at. That's under D, but then right below it, it's been renumbered from 3 to 2.
Okay, so it reads, except where based on valid affirmative action program. Is that where you're beginning?
In the red line, I can't read what it says, but it appears duplicative of the original. So I went back to the original and looked at it. And it's essentially a prohibition on asking questions, even in a loan application, about someone's source of income. I think we'd run into real problems, assuming that people in Barrington finance home purchases like anyone else, that you wouldn't be able to ask in a loan application what is your source of income.
So I'm having trouble finding the spot in the ordinance, but I brought that up specifically with Solicitor Goins because I had that same question. How are we going to know? How would a landlord know what the income is without asking the questions about income? Mm-hmm. And she directed me to, a subsection in line that I'm looking for now that basically says except where it's part of the, standard form application. So I'm looking for that now.
I mean, even if that's the case, then I kind of scratch my head. What does 5A2 accomplish, right? It says, so except where based on a valid affirmative action program or record keeping or reporting requirements, or is otherwise expressly mandated or allowed by state or federal statute or regulation, or any person, agent, manager, owner, or developer of any apartment or housing unit, et cetera, to make or keep any record of an applicant's source of income. And I don't think, and then the next one is to use any form of housing or loan application which contains questions or entries, directly or indirectly, pertaining to a lawful source of income. And I can't imagine that question isn't, part and parcel of what most people do, both in financing a purchase or in executing any kind of lease beyond a month-to-month lease. I know that the ordinance would prohibit discrimination on that basis, but it doesn't seem like an unreasonable question to ask, what is your source of income, if for no other reason than to confirm that it is a lawful source of income.
Right, so you would strike the entirety of that 3 ABC or 2 ABC?
Yes, so it would make 2, right, strike 2 in its entirety with A, B, and C, and then just renumber accordingly.
Jacob, could you accept that change?
Yeah, I can accept that.
Okay, sorry, did I ask, with that change, I'll second that. Let me just, look and see, folks, with that change, Vice President Weymouth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Boyajian?
Aye.
Councilor Breyer?
Aye.
Councilor Hearn?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. That motion carries. Thank you. And thanks to Councilor Breyer and to the folks on the Housing Board for their hard work on this. Next item on the agenda is the public hearing on 2020-20, which is a renewal of the ordinance for the declaration of emergency. And I am opening the public hearing into that ordinance. Would anyone like to be heard on that? Jeff Grove. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm questioning the necessity of extending the state of emergency in our town based on the pandemic, which is what was the reasoning inside, used for this. I went to the Department of Health website today to look up the most recent numbers. And in our town, to date, there's been 82 cases of COVID, so 0.5% of our population. The incidence of COVID is very low here, and I think that if that's the sole reason why we're extending the state of emergency and giving emergency powers to the town manager, I question that. So
I think I can possibly address that. First, the part of the reason for the state of emergency is because of FEMA funding. We may not be able to access FEMA funding unless we are in a state of emergency. That's only part of it. And I'm really glad that you've given me the opportunity to quote Justice Ginsburg when she said, changing this would be like throwing away your umbrella in a rainstorm because you're not getting wet. Part of the reason that we have such low numbers is because of our state of emergency, of the steps that we've taken. Our town manager has been upfront. We were the first community in the state, even before the governor, to call for face masks. Those efforts have led us to these lower numbers, and we can't let up now. That's my opinion.
President Carroll, if I could, there are some other administrative reasons, and I want to give you just an example of a small one. The Commerce Department has come out with a Take It Outside campaign, and the library, as usual, was ahead of the game, and they've scheduled a lot of different things outside. One of the things was an event activity that was going to take place in back of the library, and it was going to be an evening event, and they were going to use a chimenea. And I went to the ordinances, and you can use chimeneas in your yard, but you can't have any kind of open fires on town property because we don't want people lighting campfires at Veterans Park. Certainly, this wasn't an example of that, and something that was, part of this Take It Outside campaign. And I talked to the solicitor, and he said, certainly under your emergency powers, you can waiver that for that particular event. And he's going to draft an amendment to the ordinance to allow that in the future. But, you know, the fire chief rightfully said no, because that's what the ordinance says. And fortunately, we were able to go forward with this event because of that. So there's a lot of little administrative things that this helps, as well as you said, the FEMA funding.
Councilor Breyer. So,
yeah, I was going to add to what President Carroll said, that I think a big part of why Barrington has fared so well are the steps we've taken. I think the first on the council to be saying we needed to have emergency powers given to the manager, but I was also, I think, the first one on the council, and I've continued to question whether we still need to be in a state of emergency. I think it was back in July, or might have even been before that I said, you know, this is the new normal now. We have to start going back to normal governance. But if we look at what this declaration of emergency does, the vast majority of the actions the council traditionally takes, it's still taking. But things like waiving permit needs or waiving a fee for this or being able to be more agile with when our businesses want to be able to either apply for the Take It Outside campaign funding or other actions, we just wouldn't have been able to move as quickly as needed if we weren't in this state of emergency.
Yes, Jeff Grove.
Okay, thanks. So I understand the reasoning there, and I definitely support agility in government. So I like that. But at what point do we say that we're no longer in a state of emergency and we no longer need to extend these powers? What's the criteria?
Well, I should first of all state that the powers are limited. They are limited so that they do not include legislative or financial. So that means actually Jim can't waive fees without us doing that, but he can take certain steps, including things like if we had some huge spike, we would want to instantly react, and maybe he would say, okay, no in-store action if we had some, outbreak and that could still happen. So that doesn't answer your question. Your question was for how long, and the answer that I have is I don't know. But we're looking at it every month. So if we ever felt, and I don't anticipate this, but if we ever felt that there was any urgency to removing the state of emergency, we could call a special meeting of the town council to do so. But until things change, I think we're going to have to keep looking at this. I don't think we're anywhere close to out of the woods yet. And I should say, one of the things that I'll just put a plug in for our fire department, they have a program in place where if we do get vaccines and we get it in sufficient quantities, we can vaccinate everybody in town, I think, Chief, in less than 72 hours. That's called the MedPods program. They are ready to set up in the high school. They train for this, and they would have the thing set up and have everybody in town inoculated. That's if there was sufficient vaccine and it was called for in that way. So that was a long-winded answer to your question, but I guess the answer is until the pandemic is more under control.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm so sorry. I'm speaking out of turn, but I think the consensus is that we're going to be living with this for a long time. So that was the kind of the nature of my concern, was that we don't continue to live under state of emergency indefinitely. That's all.
Okay.
But I understand your position.
Thank you.
To chime in on that, I mean, I think Jeff's concern is a fair one. I will say, from my own perspective, I think it's an emergency as long as we're required to meet from our own living rooms via video and can't sit in a room together, something's not quite right, right? So, I mean, a war might drag on 10 years. You never say it's not an emergency. This feels awfully like an emergency to me.
Yeah. Would anyone else from the public like to be heard? Seeing no one, I will close the public hearing, and I'd ask if anyone would make a motion.
I have amendment that I wanted to discuss first is we had been setting them to expire several days after our next planned meeting, just in case something happens and we have to reschedule the meeting. I noticed this one is the day after and it's election day. So I just thought maybe moving it to November 6th so that if we had to reschedule something, that we're not scrambling on election day to figure it out. And then I had a question, but we can go through the motion first, and I'll bring that up during discussion.
I think that's a great idea. So that would be in the second paragraph, the last sentence, change that November 3rd, 2020 to November 6th, 2020. And do I take it? And in the last paragraph too. So I take it that is your motion to
Yeah.
renew the declaration of emergency with those changes.
Yes.
Okay, I'll second that. Vice President Weymouth. You wanted to say something else, so
yes.
Made and seconded.
So I just, similar question that I've been asking each time we've renewed this, but with a specific element to it. So I was wondering what might be seen coming up on the horizon if there are any changes. And then also I've been seeing some conversation threads around Halloween, and just wanted to bring that up for discussion if anything is going to be done out of the ordinary. I don't want to get involved, as a government with how Halloween is celebrated. But I wanted to just see if that had been thought of and if there are any plans in the works for anything.
Jim, please.
Thank you, Mr. President. Council Breyer, the Halloween, as you know, the governor's come out and said we will have Halloween, be careful. That being said, there's been a considerable uptick nationwide, including in Rhode Island, where we're up above 3% for the first time in many months. So I don't anticipate anything, but I'm a little weary that, and we kind of expected as we went back to school that things were going to, and that most of the increases are due to university and colleges as expected, and we can expect some from our own public schools as well. But, I don't anticipate anything besides that. We've taken some action with Halloween. We're doing our festival with no contact. And so, those types of things. But I don't see any drastic changes coming down the road, but you never know.
So motion's been made and seconded. Vice President Weymouth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councillor Boyajian, how do you vote? Councillor Breyer, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councillor Hearn?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. The motion carries. Next item, we go back to item 16. This is to discuss and act on bids. Department of Public Works looking for a mini excavator. Is Director Corby on the line? There you are.
Hello. Yeah, we're looking to purchase a mini excavator through the state master price agreement through Schmidt Equipment, and it's for $68,799.
Okay, and where is that from?
It would be purchased through funds from the capital budget. It was approved by the planning board in the capital budget for DPW this fiscal year.
Right. Okay. Any questions from the council?
I'll make a motion to award a bid for a 2020 John Deere 50G mini excavator in the amount of $68,799 as listed in the Rhode Island Master Price Agreement, MPA 506, to Schmidt Equipment Incorporated.
Second.
Motion's been made and seconded. Vice President Weymouth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councilor Boyajian?
Aye.
Councilor Breyer?
Aye.
Councilor Hearn?
Aye.
And I also vote aye.
Thank
The
you.
motion carries. So the next item is from Phil Hervey's department, the Department of Planning. This is the Police Cove Transient Dock. This one has been going on for years. This is maybe the last item. We have to have a topping ceremony or something. This is the last item for that bridge repair, original bridge repair, right?
I guess it's kind of related to the boat ramp, which is related to the bridge. So there's a connection. This has been like a long time goal of the harbor master in particular, is to build a transient dock adjacent to the boat ramp to assist with the function of the boat ramp. Luckily, I mean, actually, it's probably best that it took this long because we were able to get the the DOT money from the state for rebuilding the boat ramp, which was funded as part of the bridge replacement project, and that was completed a few years ago. Last year or so, we secured a grant from a Wildlife and Sport Fish Restoration Boating Access Program grant from DEM in the amount of $127,950 to help pay for the cost of the transient dock. And we had subsequently hired GZA to complete the engineering and permitting and specs and everything related to the project. Based on the plans and the specs, we advertised for bid. In August, and the deadline was September 25th, and we received 3 bids, and the bids were all over the place. The low bid was $155,000 from Atlantic Marine of Westerly. We also received a bid of about $250,000 and another bid for $487,000. The difference in the bids would probably explain by the proposed construction technique. One option was to build up basically a platform on top of the existing boat ramp for the crane and for driving in the piles, and that was the most expensive route. The other route would be to bring a barge in underneath the bridge and do it kind of the traditional way off of a barge, and then that would be Atlantic Marine proposal, and I think that's why the cost of their proposal is so much less than the other two. The reference check was great, and I think they are really strong references based on much larger projects actually, which were completed on time and on budget. Nothing but positive statements from people I talked to. So the request would be to award the bid to Atlantic Marine Construction of Westerly in the amount of $155,000, with the motion would need to include an allowance of $33,000 for drilled rock socket piles if needed, based on the installation of the timber piles, if the subsurface conditions aren't amenable to, aren't meeting the specs, the engineering specs. Hopefully that won't be needed. Also, we're looking for a 10% contingency for potential other changes in the amount of $15,500. The funding would be mostly from the grant, but also the remaining balance of the Police Cove Park reserve account. There's a small amount of money in a transient dock reserve account, and there's also the the park and trails and field maintenance fund, which would fund the rest of that local money. So that is the request. Do you have any questions?
Questions? Okay.
I was going to make that my motion until you added all the other stuff. Can I do that? Can I make the motion up until the construction contingency totaling $15,500?
So you're making a motion to award Police Cove Transit Dock project to Atlantic Marine Construction, West Leap, Rhode Island, in the amount of $155,000 to include additional allowance of $33,000 for drilled rock socket piles if required, and an additional 10% construction contingency of $15,500.
That is my motion.
Okay. The motion's been made. Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. Motion's been made by Councillor Boyajian. Vice President Weymouth, how do you vote?
Aye.
Councillor Boyajian.
Aye.
Councillor Breyer.
Aye. Councillor
Hearn.
Aye.
And I also vote aye. The motion carries. Thanks, Phil. So the next item on our agenda is to discuss our next agenda. And one of those things is bids for diversity, equity, inclusion consultant. Anything else that anyone could think of right now?
Continuing the interviews for the Cemetery Commission.
Right.
And I actually would like to bring forward for discussion the letter that I'm assuming we all received from Julia Califano about making the elderly flat exemption not have to be brought up, or what's the word?
They apply for
every year, because I don't think that was the past practice for the flat exemption.
It has, Kate, and that was due to try to prove a residency requirement for people that become snowbirds and no longer qualify because Barrington's no longer their primary residence. And while I think that not having an application every year, because unfortunately none of us are going to get any younger, so once you qualify for the 65 senior tax exemption, you should keep it as long as you're a Barrington resident. Our calculations are that we spend much more time processing those applications, and it costs us much more money than just the ones we might lose to a dishonest taxpayer that continues to collect the exemption.
Okay, so we'll put that on the agenda. I think that's actually ordinance, so that would require, would that, Mike Ursula, require an ordinance change?
It would, and I was just going to say we're really going deeply into this discussion, so
yeah,
if we just put it on the next agenda, otherwise we have to vote to add this subject to tonight's agenda.
Okay. So we'll put on the next agenda the tax exemption application. Okay, anything else for next month? All right, seeing none. Does someone want to make a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Motion's been made. Vice President Weymouth, how do you vote?
Oh, aye.
Councillor Boyajian?
Aye.
Councillor Breyer?
Aye.
Councillor Hearn?
Aye.
And I also vote aye. The meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good night, Mike.
Good night.
Take care.